What's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and today we are heading up to the Mecca of hockey. That's right, we're heading to the Montreal Canadiens today to take a look at which rookies I think could make this team on the opening night roster, night one against the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is an important season for the Montreal Canadiens as it is the first full season under their new staff here. It is a huge season for this team, for Jeff Gorton, Kent Hughes, and of course head coach Marty St. Louis. So the question is, looking at this team, forwards, defense, and maybe even goaltending, could we see any rookies make the team out of training camp? And, there was one that I was pretty certain was going to make it. At this point, it looks like he might not make the team and might even go back to Laval. So the one that I was very certain could get in might even start the season in Laval. We'll go over all of that today. So we're going to start off with the forwards, of course. And this isn't too much of a surprise, but I'm looking at Michael Pizzetta. Now, this is one that maybe he's not a rookie, but I think it's worth mentioning Michael Pizzetta because he had a great end to last season, enough to get a contract extension for this year. But the questions about Pizzetta are, well, there's another guy that this is going to lead us into also up front. Is Michael Pizzetta going to be a guy that ends up sitting in the press box and another player seems to take his spot on the third or fourth line? And Michael Pizzetta, as a hockey fan, I really like Michael Pizzetta. I think he's a guy that he's only 24 years old, and it's one of those guys where it's like, do you really want to give up on that kind of guy? Now, here's the thing. I don't know what they're doing with Brendan Gallagher and a guy like Mike Hoffman and Dvorak. If they trade some of those guys, I think it's worth keeping Pizzetta around. But if you're looking at keeping those guys and you're not going to be able to trade them, well, maybe it's worth trading Michael Pizzetta for at least a second or third round pick because I do think he is, again, I would rather keep him if I'm the Habs. Again, if you're looking at a cheaper contract compared to Gallagher, or I think they like Anderson, he's sticking around, but I think I look at a guy like Hoffman or Dvorak or Gallagher, one of those three guys, he could end up developing into one of those types of players, right? So you kind of worry about that. But again, is it at the sacrifice or the cost of developing your first overall pick, 18-year-old Yoroshlovkowski, which is the main guy I want to talk about today? Because I was pretty certain in rookie camp this summer, and when he was drafted, a lot of people looked at his size and, kind of looked at him and said, yeah, this guy's going to be playing on night one for the Habs. Well, that's not necessarily looking like the case right now. And there's the potential that Slavkovsky doesn't start on opening night for the Habs. Now, that isn't the worst thing in the world. Even if he plays, let's say by November 1st, he's in Montreal. That's fine. Give him a year, give him at least a month in Laval to at least work for it. Make him work for it. And I think that's something that means a lot here because there isn't the pressure of having him start night one. We've seen that the last couple of years. First overall picks, not even playing in the NHL that first season, right? Owen Power is the most recent example of that, right? First overall picks do not always have to play in the NHL right away. That's not necessarily the case. So when you look at a guy like Slavkovsky, even if he starts 3 weeks in Laval, right? And gets a lot of playing time, maybe makes a little extra dollars for the Laval fans up there, getting some traffic to the Rocket. They're going to be a great team down there, and that could be a really good way for him to gain some confidence at the pro level before going to Montreal. And maybe if that's what they end up doing, well, then you keep Michael Pizzetta, and it's worth keeping him around. So if I look at it right now, again, if I'm Kent Hughes, this is how I look at it. Keep Michael Pizzetta on the roster. Let him start this season, opening night, see how he does, right? He does get maybe that little edge because he has the experience from last year. Make Slavkovsky work for it. Humble him a little bit. Let him play in the AHL, gain some confidence, just rip it up and tear up the points down in the AHL. And then by the end of the month, have him come up to Montreal. And that way, he's going to be ready to go. Again, in Montreal, the bright lights are already so bright. He's probably going to get a good sunburn and probably a good tan from it. But let him maybe ease into it a little bit. I think that's the best thing the Habs can do. So again, it depends on that. That is my prediction right now. We see Slavkovsky start the first month in Laval and end up playing in Montreal with it by the end of November, right? By the end of November, confidently, I could say by Thanksgiving, he will definitely be in Montreal. And that gives a chance for Michael Pizzetta to kind of prove his worth in the NHL as well in the meantime. On the back end, there's a couple of interesting guys here. Justin Barron, Jordan Harris are just a couple of those guys. Now, really, those are the main two guys. Justin Barron is definitely the more offensive-minded defenseman and the more moving the puck forward, kind of the Jeff Petrie defenseman. Jordan Harris, they have him listed as a left shot defenseman. He could also play right shot, which kind of keeps things interesting in that side of the book. He's more multi-dimensional than Justin Barron, which is definitely an edge. Maybe he doesn't put up the points that Barron does, but again, something that is an extra intangible on top, right? You know, if you're looking at them, all things considered, well, he could play both sides, which is definitely a good thing. He has a little bit more experience as well, which might help him than Justin Barron, who obviously came over from the Arturi Lehkonen trade, and is going to be a great defenseman. I'm really excited to see how he develops, but you know, don't forget Jordan Harris. I did see him last year when the Habs came to MSG last year, and he looked pretty good against the New York Rangers, who, again, maybe they were resting some guys at the end of the season that game, but he looked pretty good at the Garden. Other than that, I mean, there isn't really many guys. I mean, obviously there's Owen Beck, Philip Mazar, Jesse Yelenin, Joshua Waugh, up front, Jan Mysek, Nate Schnarr, but I don't see any of them making the team out of, in terms of the opening night roster. So, again, it's one of those things where I think there's potential there, but you're probably not going to see those guys playing night one. Looking at the blue line, Logan Mailloux, congratulations. Listen, I don't care what you think about him one way or the other. He's gone through a lot of adversity, and I hope he's coming out on the other side of it. And, you know, with everything that he's gone through, you have to consider that the Habs, he is that good of a player where he's worth the distraction. And some people may not like that, and the fact that I'm even saying that, and that's totally valid. But I think that you have to remember here that the Habs are putting themselves on the line by having that pressure out there that they signed him. Right? So there is always that attachment. So he is worth that attention for the Habs because he is playing that well. Now, he dealt with shoulder surgery, hasn't played a lot over the last 2 years, which makes you concerned, plus the suspension. And if they didn't sign him, you know, if they waited till next summer and didn't sign him and signed him in, say, August, they could have got a second-round pick for him. So obviously a bold statement, again, by Kent Hughes, kind of putting his mark on this and the full confidence, vote of confidence for Logan Mailloux. So we'll see how things play out. He'll end up probably going back to the OHL, back to the London Knights. So we'll see how that kind of works out here down the stretch. Arbor Hasia, I think that's how you say it, has produced and played well in training camp, but he is back down in Laval, so I expect him to be back there this year. Actually, no, he's back in, is he playing in Laval? He might be going back to Hamilton. I'm not necessarily sure. He's either playing in Hamilton or Laval. So we'll see what happens to Hasia. So that's kind of the situation. I think the Habs, for the most part, you're really looking at Slavkovsky as really the rookie that's going to get in there, and Justin Barron. And again, Barron played last year, so he's not a total prospect. Same thing for Jordan Harris. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think we'll see any weird guys make the roster? Again, I think next year's going to be more where you look at the Arbor Hasias, the Jesse Yelenins, Philip Mazar, Owen Beck, maybe looking more at those guys making the roster. Jan Mysek is definitely one to keep an eye on. But let me know what you guys think down below. Which prospects on the Montreal Canadiens do you think will have the rookie campaigns this year, or do you think they will spend the season in Laval? I think the biggest question really is about Slavkovsky. Will he start the season in Laval, or will he start the season in Montreal? Because if it's one of those things where if he starts the season in Montreal, right, and he struggles that first month. Well, then you end up sending him to Laval in November, and now he's got a lot of adversity going down to the AHL. Or do you put him in the comfier position where you can only go up, where he starts the season in Laval, works his way into the NHL roster, and then you could kind of play it from there, right? I think that's the best scenario here for him. But let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.